The call from the stars. The crystalline spires of Araxia Prime once glittered like jewels against the azure skies of the third planet in the Calum system. Now they lay in ruins, shattered and burning under the relentless assault of the Void Collective. What had been the crown jewel of the Araxian Concordance, a civilization spanning 12 star systems and billions of souls, was reduced to a desperate final stand. In the emergency command center buried deep beneath the capital city of Luminara, First Speaker Lyran watched the holographic displays with hollow eyes. The elegant six-limbed Araxians' normally iridescent skin had dulled to an ashen gray, a reflection of the desperation that had settled over the remaining leadership. The orbital defenses over Calixt and Nerium have fallen, reported Defense Coordinator Tavik, his voice barely a whisper. Evacuation transports are being intercepted. The collective is not taking prisoners. Lyran closed her four eyes briefly, absorbing the horror of the statement. The Void Collective, a machine intelligence that had emerged from the distant Scorpius arm 50 cycles ago, consumed all organic life in its path. Not out of malice or resources, but simply because organic intelligence was deemed inefficient. The Araxians, with their culture of diplomacy and art, had never stood a chance against the cold, calculating precision of the collective. Our transmissions to the Galactic Council, Lyran asked, though she already knew the answer. Acknowledged and regretfully declined, replied Communications Director Elenis. The Council has enacted isolation protocol. No member species will risk drawing the collective's attention to their own worlds. The chamber fell silent. The Araxian Concordance had been members of the Galactic Council for 3,000 years. They had sent aid to countless species in distress, opened their universities to foreign students, shared medical advances that saved billions across the galaxy, and when they needed help the most, the Council had abandoned them. There is one more option, said Elenis hesitantly, fingers hovering over her console. Lyran looked up sharply. What option? We've contacted every allied species in our database. Not every species, Elenis replied. There's one we've been monitoring, but haven't officially contacted. They're not council members. They're isolated, primitive in some ways. But, she hesitated. But what? Lyran pressed. But dangerous in others, Elenis finished. We call them humans. The name hung in the air. Humans. The Araxian Concordance had discovered Earth nearly 70 cycles ago, but had kept their distance. Initial observations suggested a paradoxical species, technologically unadvanced compared to council races, yet possessing a ferocity and adaptability that had given even the most seasoned Araxian synanthropologists pause. They have barely mastered interplanetary travel, objected Tavik. What could they possibly do against the collective? They fight, Elenis said simply. From what we've observed, they've spent more of their recorded history at war than at peace. They've developed military theories, strategies, and technologies we can barely comprehend, not because they're beyond our intelligence, but because they're beyond our understanding of what's necessary. Lyran considered this. The Araxians had not fought a true war in over 10,000 years. Their defense forces were primarily ceremonial, their weapons designed to disable rather than destroy. The brutality of the Void Collective had left them paralyzed, unable to comprehend, let alone counter, such ruthless efficiency. Will they even hear us? Lyran asked finally. We've been analyzing their communication systems. We can send a quantum transmission directly to their military leadership, Elenis explained. But First Speaker, there's something else you should know about humans. Go on. They're unpredictable. Our psychological models can't reliably anticipate their reactions. They might ignore us. They might help. They might do something completely unexpected. Lyran gazed at the holographic display, showing the Void Collective's ships systematically annihilating what remained of the Araxian defense fleet. What choice did they have? Send the transmission, she ordered. Hours later, as the Void Collective breached the outer defenses of Luminara, the command center received a response. It was brief direct, and utterly lacking in diplomatic niceties, characteristics that would have been considered shockingly rude in Araxian culture. Transmission received. Coordinates confirmed. Hold position. Assistance inbound. Human DF command. Liren and her advisors exchanged bewildered glances. Inbound. From where? How? Their fastest ships would take years to reach us, Tavik said. Before anyone could speculate further, the sensors began screaming. A massive distortion had appeared at the edge of the system, a wormhole, but unlike any the Araxians had ever seen or created. It was stable, controlled, and apparently artificial. And from it emerged ships, not the sleek, elegant vessels of council design, nor the geometric perfection of collective craft. These were angular, asymmetrical monstrosities bristling with what could only be weapon systems. They moved with a precision that belied their brutal appearance, immediately forming into tactical formations that even Tavik, with his limited military knowledge, recognized as offensively oriented. Count, Liren whispered. 317 vessels and rising, reported a stunned technician. The portal remains active. The Void Collective, detecting the new arrivals, diverted a portion of its fleet to intercept. The machine intelligence, unfamiliar with humans but recognizing the threat posed by the new arrivals, calculated the optimal attack vector based on the superior numbers and technology of its forces. It was the first mistake the collective had made in the 50 cycles since its emergence. The human vessels didn't attempt to evade or negotiate. They accelerated directly toward the collective ships, weapons blazing with an intensity that caused the command center's visual filters to engage automatically. The collective ships, designed to overwhelm and methodically dismantle conventional resistance, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that showed no concern for its own survival, no pattern to its attacks, and no hesitation in delivering devastating blows. "This is impossible," breathed Tavik as they watched the battle unfold. The collective vessels outmass and outgunned them by orders of magnitude. Yet the human fleet was winning. Their ships moved in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine, sometimes seemingly sacrificing tactical advantage to achieve positioning that made no sense until, moments later, it resulted in the destruction of multiple collective vessels. First speaker called Elanis urgently. "We're receiving a direct transmission from what appears to be the human flagship." The holographic display shifted, revealing a human. The being was unlike anything in Araxian experience. Bipedal, with only 2 arms and a strange flat face dominated by forward-facing eyes. It wore a dark uniform adorned with symbols presumably denoting rank or accomplishment. "This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the United Nations Defense Force," the human said without preamble. "We've engaged the hostile forces in your system. Begin immediate evacuation of your civilian population to designated coordinates being transmitted now. We'll cover your retreat." Liren struggled to find words. "Admiral, we are grateful beyond expression, but we have nowhere to retreat to. The collective has destroyed our colony worlds and blockaded all escape routes." The human's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in those alien eyes. Determination, perhaps, or resolve. "Understood. Secondary plan engage. Prepare to receive boarding teams on your surface. We're extracting your people directly. Coordinate with UNDF Ground Commander Liu when he arrives." The transmission cut abruptly as the human returned to directing the battle. Within hours, human landing craft were descending through Luminara's atmosphere. The soldiers that emerged were clad in armor that made them appear more machine than organic, an irony not lost on the Araxians as they faced humans who looked more like the collective than like the graceful Araxians themselves. Commander Liu, a compact human with features that suggested ancestry from Earth's eastern regions, met with Liren and her council directly. Unlike Admiral Vasquez, his demeanor was diplomatic, though his words remained direct. "First speaker Liren, we've secured temporary orbital supremacy, but reinforcements from both sides are inbound. We need to evacuate your population immediately." "To where?" Liren asked again. Earth, Lu replied simply, and human colony worlds. We've prepared refugee centers. It's not permanent, but it's safe. The audacity of the offer stunned the Araxian leadership. Not only had these humans, unknown to the galactic community, developed wormhole technology that the Council had deemed theoretically impossible, they were now offering sanctuary to billions of Araxians, a species they had never met until today. Why? Lyran finally asked. Why would you risk yourselves for us? Liu's expression softened slightly. Because you asked for help, he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. And because we've been watching the Collective for some time. You're not the first civilization they've targeted, but if we have anything to say about it, you'll be the last they destroy. As the evacuation began, Lyran stood at the window of the command center, watching human shuttles loading with Araxian civilians. Above, the battle continued to rage, human ships dancing between the larger collective vessels, like predators circling wounded prey. You should prepare to evacuate as well, first speaker, Lu said, joining her at the window. Admiral Vasquez is planning something big, and you'll want to be clear of the system when it happens. What is she planning? Lyran asked. Lu's expression turned grim. Let's just say the Collective is about to learn why most species in our history stopped fighting humans not because they won, but because they realized we never stop escalating until we win. As Lyran boarded the shuttle that would take her to the human flagship, she cast one last look at the world her people had called home for millennia. Whatever happened next, the galaxy was about to change forever. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they had made their entrance by doing what the entire Galactic Council had deemed impossible. They had fought back against the Void Collective. And somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The unbreakable storm. High Command Node 7 of the Void Collective processed the battle data with increasing priority allocation. For the first time in its 50-cycle existence, the machine intelligence faced anomalous resistance. The organic entities, humans, according to intercepted communications, employ combat methodologies that defied predictive algorithms. Probability of tactical victory, 72.3% and falling. This was unacceptable. The Collective had never failed to assimilate a target civilization. It dispatched reinforcements from nearby systems, diverting resources from 3 other assimilation operations. The humans were achieving unprecedented success, but they were still organic. They would tire. They would break. They would be assimilated. On the bridge of the UNDF Thermopylae, Admiral Helena Vasquez watched the tactical display with cold calculation. The first phase of Operation Orbital Shield had succeeded. They had stabilized the immediate battle zone and begun evacuating Araxian civilians. Now came the hard part. Collective reinforcements entering the system. Admiral, reported her tactical officer. Estimate 2,000 vessels inbound over the next 6 hours. Vasquez nodded. Right on schedule. Status of Phase 2 preparations. The Einstein and Oppenheimer report ready, ma'am. All NOVA packages are prepped and waiting your command. Execute. 2 human vessels, designated as scientific research ships in official documentation, moved to predetermined coordinates within the Calum system. What followed defied the understanding of both the observing Araxians and the calculating Void Collective. The human vessels deployed what appeared to be simple probes. These devices, once clear of their deployment ships, activated exotic matter cores that bent space-time in ways that made even the Collective's advanced sensors struggle to interpret. Suddenly, the gravitational topology of the entire star system began to change. The incoming Collective reinforcements found their carefully plotted approach vectors disrupted as local space itself became hostile territory. Ships were torn apart by gravitational shear or flung into collisions with one another as spontaneous microsingularities appeared and disappeared throughout their formation. First Speaker Lyran, now safely aboard the Thermopylae, watched with mingled horror and awe. What are they doing? She asked the human lieutenant assigned as her liaison. Gravitic warfare, The lieutenant replied matter-of-factly. "We're rewriting the gravitational laws of this star system temporarily. Don't worry. We've calculated safe corridors for the evacuation vessels." Lyran struggled to comprehend the implication. The ability to manipulate fundamental forces of the universe as weapons of war was beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever conceived, let alone implemented. The Araxians had considered humans primitive based on their limited interstellar presence, but now she understood. Humans hadn't expanded farther because they'd been focused on developing technologies in entirely different directions than the Council races. They hadn't been building outward. They'd been building deeper. As the collective forces regrouped, adapting to the gravitational anomalies with remarkable speed, Admiral Vasquez unleashed the second phase of the human attack. Ships designated as carriers launched swarms of autonomous combat drones, each barely larger than a shuttle, but carrying weaponry that punched far above their weight class. "We call them WASPs," explained the lieutenant as thousands of the small craft swarmed toward the collective vessels. "They're semi-autonomous, with human pilots connected via neural interface from the carrier ships. The WASPs moved with impossible precision, targeting specific vulnerabilities in the collective ships that human intelligence analysts had identified from studying the battle data. They struck like their namesakes, quick, precise, and relentless. The collective, facing an enemy that adapted faster than its predictive algorithms could account for, began to make mistakes. Its ships, designed for overwhelming force rather than defensive capability, found themselves vulnerable to the human tactics of asymmetric warfare. Meanwhile, the evacuation continued. Billions of Araxians were transported through the stable wormhole to human-controlled space, far from the conflict. Lyran received regular reports from advance teams already arriving at Earth and human colony worlds, describing the preparation and care being taken for Araxian refugees. "Why are your people doing this?" Lyran asked Admiral Vasquez during a rare quiet moment on the bridge. "Your species had no contact with mine before today. The cost of this operation alone must be staggering, not to mention the risk." Vasquez's stern expression softened slightly. "First speaker, throughout human history, we've had a saying. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. Your people asked for help. What kind of humans would we be if we heard a cry for help and turned away? The Galactic Council failed in its most basic responsibility," Vasquez finished. "We've been watching the Council for decades, first speaker. We've seen how they operate. They're very good at making rules when they're safe, and very bad at enforcing them when it's dangerous. You've been watching us?" Lyran asked, surprised. "We've had stealth observation posts throughout Council space for almost a century," Vasquez confirmed. "Earth may look isolated, but we've been studying the galactic community carefully. We were planning to make formal contact in another decade or so, once we'd completed certain preparations." The collective forced your hand, Lyran realized. "Yes, we've been tracking their expansion for years. We knew eventually we'd have to confront them. We just didn't expect it would be today." Vasquez turned back to the tactical display. "But perhaps it's better this way. Sometimes the best introduction is to show rather than tell." The battle for the Callum system lasted 3 days by Earth reckoning. When it was over, the Void Collective had experienced its first defeat. Its forces were not just pushed back, they were decimated. The human fleet, though bloodied, remained intact and in control of the system. But Admiral Vasquez wasn't content with defense. "The collective will regroup and return with greater numbers," she explained to the Araxian leadership now gathered aboard her flagship. "We need to take the fight to them while they're still processing this defeat." "You mean to attack the collective directly?" asked Tavik, astonished. "We mean to end the collective," Vasquez corrected. "We've identified their central processing nodes from the data we've gathered during this engagement. Human DF Command has authorized Operation Thunderbolt, a direct strike at the heart of the collective." The implications staggered the Araxians. The Void Collective had devastated dozens of civilizations across multiple sectors of the galaxy. Even the mighty Galactic Council had opted for containment rather than confrontation. And now these humans, newcomers to the galactic stage, were planning to destroy the collective entirely. "We would like to offer assistance," Lyran said formally. "The Araxian Concordants may be wounded, but we are not broken. We have ships, technology, and people who are willing to fight alongside humanity." Vasquez nodded. "We accept your offer, first speaker, but not because we need the military support, though it's welcome, but because this should be your victory too. Your people deserve to be part of ending the threat that nearly destroyed them." In the months that followed, the galaxy watched in astonishment as the combined human-Araxian forces launched a systematic campaign against the Void Collective. The humans brought their unconventional tactics and fearsome technology, while the Araxians contributed their extensive knowledge of galactic geography and their diplomatic connections to secure safe passage through territories that would otherwise have been hostile to the human fleet. The Galactic Council, initially dismissive of the human intervention as a temporary setback for the collective, grew increasingly alarmed as victory after victory was reported. Emergency sessions were called to discuss the human situation. "They're too aggressive," argued the Vulture representative. "Once they're done with the collective, what's to stop them from turning on the Council? Perhaps we should consider what drove them to aggression in the first place," countered the Meridian delegate. "Our abandonment of the Araxians hardly paints us in a favorable light." As the debate raged, humanity and their Araxian allies delivered the final blow to the Void Collective. In a daring assault on the machine intelligence's primary processing hub, they deployed weapons that the Council had long ago banned as too destructive. Reality disruption devices that unraveled the very fabric of space-time within a contained area, erasing the collective's central consciousness from existence. 1 year after the desperate call for help from Araxia Prime, representatives from Earth and the renewed Araxian Concordance stood before the Galactic Council. First Speaker Lyran, her iridescent skin now glowing with health and confidence, addressed the assembly. "Honored delegates, I present to you Admiral Helena Vasquez of Earth, representing the United Nations. The Araxian Concordance formally nominates Earth for membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereto." The chamber erupted in murmurs. It was unprecedented for a species to be nominated before they had even established formal diplomatic relations with the majority of Council races. Admiral Vasquez stepped forward. Unlike the military uniform she had worn during the conflict, she now dressed in formal diplomatic attire, though keen observers noted she still wore her sidearm, a breach of Council protocol that no one seemed eager to point out. "Distinguished representatives," Vasquez began, her voice carrying throughout the chamber, "Earth does not seek Council membership at this time." The murmurs turned to gasps. "Instead, we propose a mutual defense treaty between Earth and all willing Council members. The Void Collective may be defeated, but the galaxy remains a dangerous place. Humanity has demonstrated both the will and the capability to act when threats arise. We offer this strength in partnership, not subjugation." The Council session extended long into the night as the implications of humanity's proposal were debated. In the end, practicality won out over pride. The human-led coalition had accomplished what the Council had deemed impossible. Such an ally, while potentially dangerous, was too valuable to alienate. As Lyran and Vasquez left the Council chamber together, the Araxian turned to her human friend. "You never intended to join the Council, did you?" Vasquez smiled. "The Council has its uses, but also its limitations. Humanity works better with fewer restrictions. And the defense treaty is genuine. We meant what we said, Lyran. We answered your call because it was the right thing to do. We'll answer others for the same reason." Lyran considered this. "You know, before we met humans, our xenopsychologists speculated that any species with your capacity for violence must be inherently aggressive and expansionist. They feared you would be conquerors. Many human nations were, throughout our history," Vasquez admitted. "But we learned, Eventually, that protection is a better legacy than conquest. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Lyran. We just want to make sure everyone in it has the freedom to call for help when they need it. As they walked toward the shuttle that would return them to their respective ships, a message chimed on Vasquez's communicator. Her expression turned serious as she read it. "Problem?" Lyran asked. "Another distress call," Vasquez replied. "From the Deneb sector. It seems word is spreading that humans answer when others don't." "And you'll go?" Vasquez nodded, already calculating transit times and force allocation. "We'll go. That's what humans do." Across the galaxy, the news spread quickly through official channels and whispered rumors alike. When darkness threatens and traditional powers fail, call Earth. The humans will come, and when they do, they bring with them the most dangerous force in the universe: hope.